Welcome to another episode of What Works for Me, a podcast highlighting best practices in Christian schools. This podcast is produced in partnership with Lutheran Education Association. To discover how LEA supports Christian teachers in schools, visit www.lea.org. My name is Mike Sheeman, principal of Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio.
And my name is Rob Lunak. I'm the superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And today we have on the podcast with us Mark Fenrick, the 8th grade teacher from St. Paul's Lutheran School in Janesville. Mark, why don't you say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello, Rob and Mike. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be a guest today. I have been at St. Paul's I'm a product of St. Paul, so I graduated from there as a young 8th grader and then came back to teach. I've been teaching there for 25 years, and I've got algebra, U.S. history, PE, athletic director, the typical Lutheran school gambit of classes.
Yeah, the other duties as assigned list, right? And then the longer you're there, the more duties get assigned.
You needed air quotes around that.
Did I? Okay, the air quotes. There we go.
There we go.
So I was fortunate enough to work with Mark. St. Paul's was my first principal call 8 years ago now, and I got to serve there for 5 years with Mark. And one of the awesome things that I saw him do is you did so much with Veterans Day. And I know there's a charity that you work with as well, and that's really what we wanted to talk about today is the work with that. So why don't you share with us what you're doing with Veterans Day out there?
Okay, well, I'm actually going to work backwards. I'm going to talk about something that's going to happen much later this year. It's called Vets Roll, and that is a wonderful organization out of the Beloit area. Some of your listeners may have heard of honor flights before. I know Madison, Wisconsin does them quite often, where they fly veterans out to Washington, D.C., and then fly them home that night. Vets Roll is very similar, but they take a bus out there. So it's a little bit longer trip, and it's all free for the veterans. And so I reached out to them. I honestly can't remember when, many years ago, asking what we could do as an 8th grade class to help support them. And they asked us to put together photo albums, blank photo albums that the veterans then could print pictures and put in there, put pamphlets in there, or other memorabilia. And we put a cover on it. We put trivia questions in the cover that the kids come up with to kind of entertain them on the bus. And of course, on the back page, we promote the church and school, and the kids write a little note on the inside back cover. So I can't speak higher of them. They are fabulous. They take roughly 200 to 220 veterans every May out to Washington, D.C. They leave on a Sunday. They're back on a Wednesday. And the organization that goes into there, I'm going to name drop. Mark Finnegan is the primary leader of that and just does a fabulous job. So that's one way we've been supporting our veterans. They also do mail call. So my wife, Jill, is the English teacher at St. Paul's. And so she will have kids write, little letters to the veterans. And then at one of their dinners, they do a mail call. And, for those that served overseas, they know that's a big deal. They get their name called, they get letters from home, and they get envelopes just chocked full of letters from family, friends, and students from around the area. So I'm happy to be a part of that group and do a little bit there with them. Earlier, though, if we come forward in the year, near Veterans Day, my 8th grade history class will be hosting a Veterans Appreciation Meal in our church. And we provide everything. I asked the parents to provide the meal. It has traditionally been a lasagna meal because I don't do a lot of cooking, but I understand you can do lasagna ahead of time and let it sit and then, bake it that morning. So that seemed like something a little bit easier to do. We do salad, we do desserts, and basically we open up to our veterans to come and enjoy a day together.
So Mark, that's fantastic. I love the church school link that you have there as well.
Thank you.
Do you typically get a lot of people that come out for that, or is it just congregation members? Do you open it to the community? How do you kind of honor the vets that way? That's a loaded question, but you take it all.
It is a loaded question, yes. It started, when I first started it, it was intended just for our congregation and their family members, because I honestly didn't know how many to expect. And that first year, of course, the first year went gangbusters. We had over 100 people come.
Wow.
The numbers have dwindled a bit, partly because we're losing our older veterans, and that's part of the reason. So, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I started opening up to some of our sister congregations in town as well. We had some students that actually were coming from some of the other congregations. They were coming to our school, but belonged to, well, for example, St. Mark's in town. And I'm like, this would be a great way, another way of connecting with them as well. We have not gone further. I would love to open it up a little bit further, but there's a little trepidation there. Last year, or 2 years ago, I had a smaller class. I'm like, I don't think I can serve more than 50 people with this size class. So that may be something down the road where we start to open it up a little bit further.
So, Mark, is St. Paul where you serve, is that an association school or is it a one-to-one with the church?
We are one-to-one with the church, but we do have an agreement. We have 3 sister congregations in town that we get a few kids from, and so because we do have tuition at St. Paul's as a sister congregation, they get a slight tuition break.
I just think that's a beautiful example of how a one-to-one can partner with other LCMS churches in your area to do something like that. I really commend you kind of for on the bigger picture thinking there to honor veterans all over the place.
Thank you.
Mark, what led you to want to start this in the first place?
Well, I'm going to work backwards again. We'll start with Vets Roll, because that's the easier one to explain. A number of years ago, our church was able to put into the budget a class, we'll call it project, service project, that every class was given X number of dollars to do a service project. That's what led me to reach out to Vets Roll. And then what we do is when we put those photo albums together, I actually time it so it happens to be on grandparent visiting day that we're putting them together. So we get the parents involved, the grandparents involved. Last year, I was told that was a forced labor, but they also said it with a smile. And then I'm able to promote the Vets Roll to these other families. And we've had members of our congregation go on this trip. So that's always a nice connection there. As far as the veterans meal, quite honestly, it's my dad. My dad served in Vietnam, and there was just one Sunday I was at church close to Veterans Day, and I'm just sitting there, and we had some patriotic themed songs in church and a prayer, and I just leaned over to Jill and I said, "This isn't enough. This is nowhere near enough." And the very next day, I went to our principal. It was before Rob, and that's how I know it's pre-Rob or post-Rob. That's how I'm doing my timing right now. And you got to do something. So I went to our principal and our pastor at the time, and I said, "This is what needs to happen. This is what I want to do." And I got immediate support from them. And, so the whole point then is beyond just because of my dad's influence, our kids need to be reaching out to our veterans and need to be interacting with them and realize how important they are in the community. And so that's how I basically promote that with my families.
Mark, what would you, if you could take this to the next level and have it continue to evolve, what are some things that you would love to see happen in the future as this continues to grow?
In the back of my mind, I'd like to open it up more to not just our sister congregations, but I'm a small adopter. I do it in baby steps. Maybe I open it up to some of the other churches in town. We've got, off the top of my head, 4 or 5 Catholic churches in town and some other Lutheran churches, different synod, that maybe we start that route. And then ultimately the goal would be to open it up even further, just as a community-wide meal. It gets tough. I do reservations, not that they're true reservations, but I ask for people to at least let me know they're planning on coming, because that helps me figure out how much food to ask for from the parents. And that's where it's going to get tricky if we start to, if I open it up too far and don't get all the reservations. I'm not turning someone away. That's what I tell the kids. You're going to get some food. I promise you'll get to have some food when you work the meal, but they eat first. And if it means I have to run out and get some Little Caesars or something, fine, but the veterans come first.
That's such a great thing to teach the kids, because it's, for a lot of our kids, it's very academic, right? They read about it in a book. Mm-hmm. And so it's great that they get that personal contact, and that you show them the value of that. That's really neat. What are some things that you have learned through running this in the last, so how long has this been going on? I guess that's my question first.
Well, that's a great question because even though I'm a history teacher, I don't actually keep a history of what I've been doing. I was looking back the other day, and I know both of my boys have done it, and my oldest just graduated from college. So if we backtrack it, I've probably been doing it since about 2014, is
Okay.
best guess. And so that is maybe 2013, somewhere around there. This might be the 10th year. I don't know offhand. So as far as over the time, I've just, the, it's more important what the kids learned
Hmm.
than what I've learned. I've learned how to manage I know, okay, if this is how many veterans are coming, this is how much lasagna I have. That nobody wants to hear about that. It's what the kids are learning.
Hmm.
And I tell them ahead of time, you are there to serve them because they served you.
Hmm.
And yes, your job, you're going to, because the kids, they take care of it. I treat it like a restaurant. I assign them sections, and you take care of this section. After the veteran has sat down, you get them their meal, you get them their drink, you take care of their dirty plates, you bring them their dessert. So we have a nice little dessert cart. I will take, I did learn one important lesson. Veterans like pie.
Okay.
We'll put that away. The first year we had desserts with cookies. They didn't want the cookies, they wanted pie. So there's an important lesson I learned. And the big thing I tell the kids is they may want to talk, and at that point you don't care about serving. At that, you stop and you listen, and they may just want to tell you. And I've got some very moving pictures of, because Jill comes and takes pictures most years of kids just standing, and you can tell they're listening. And that's what these folks want to do. They want to share their experience. One other thing I did learn, early on, the first couple of years, I called it a veterans thank you meal. And I had a couple of them say, I don't want to be thanked. I did this because it's my responsibility and my duty. And they said, I appreciate it. I appreciate the meal, but I don't need I don't want the thank you. So I changed the name to Veterans Appreciation Meal because that made sense to me. Many of them, most of them, all of them are doing it because of a sense of duty and responsibility to our country. They're not doing it for the thanks and adulation.
So listening to this, I was fortunate enough to be able to see it, right? And see that every year. What would you say to somebody who comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to start something like this at my school"? What advice would you give them if they're starting it from scratch somewhere else?
Start small. That first year was overwhelming, and there's no way I could have done it any way else. But getting over 100 people coming was emotional and overwhelming. And my dad was able to come. He's been passed away now for 6 years, but he was able to come to the first couple. So that hit me hard in a good way. I had to take a step away for a bit. Um, Ask for permission to use your school's kitchen first.
Okay.
Make sure you got that all cleared out. But we do try to get the rest of the school involved. It's gotten to a point early on. I was asking the teachers, hey, this is coming up. Can you do this? Now it's become almost habit. So last year I walked in to the church basement and the kindergartners had all hung, all of the kindergartners had hung poppies around the church basement. They had just done it themselves. The third grade class had colored soldiers, and then in the center had little thank you messages on it. Our art teachers created me centerpieces to use on all the tables that I can reuse from year to year. So getting them involved too, for some of them, they remember then when they get to eighth grade, they're like, oh, I helped out with this before, and now I'm having a bigger part in that. So if you can get the rest of the school involved, that's helpful too. The first few years, I was getting up in front of the church and talking a little bit about it too, and even visited the other congregations as well to promote it a little more. At this point, it's kind of it's expected. I don't want to use the word expected, but they know it's coming. We try and time it right before or right after Veterans Day. It's usually on a Sunday. I shouldn't say usually. It's always on a Sunday because that's when it works best for schedule purposes. I get razzed once in a while if it's during the Packer game, but that's okay. But we'll be done in time for the second half, which the way they're playing this year, you only need to watch the second half anyways.
I think that's nice to hear that you can start small. I think so often we see things other schools are doing we go, oh, that's a great thing. And then we look at how big it is and how much work goes into it. And we go, oh, we can't do that. And we always forget that it never starts that big, right? By the time we find out about it somewhere else, it's grown into that. But it doesn't need to start as that. I think that's encouraging news for people other places. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I love, though, the whole holistic view that you're doing for this, like that it's your eighth graders that are doing a lot when you talk about the serving. But I love how everybody in the school is involved in whatever way they can, because we know that teachers all have gifts and the kids want to contribute. So let them color the soldiers, let them hang the poppies. And then everybody understands they had a part in serving those who serve. So Mark, congratulations. I think that sounds like a fantastic event that you do. And thanks for spearheading that, because it's important, certainly, to honor those who have served and to, as you said, appreciate those who have served. So
absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing this adventure with us.
Mark, one of the things I'd like to be able to do is if you can send me any links to Vets Roll that you have, we can put those in the description here. If anybody wants to donate, they'll be able to do that. And then if you have any pictures, I think it'd be great so people can see some of that. If you have any, you could send our way. And then last thing, this is the one that might be the most intimidating. Are you okay if I put your school email in there so people can email you with questions they might have if they want to get started on this?
Oh, absolutely. That's not a problem at all.
Great. Good. Well, Mark, thanks for joining us on this episode of the podcast. Certainly pray God's blessings on your work in Janesville and all the things that you're doing there. And Rob, any other last words from you, or you want to close us off?
I think it's just nice to be able to get together and hear what other people are doing. So, Mark, I just want to say thank you again. And then can I pray for you before we go?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. Dear Lord, thank you for Mark. Thank you for the work that he is doing in his community. Thank you for the leadership that he provides St. Paul's and for the light that he shines into the lives of the veterans in his community. Please continue to bless his work as he serves. We also thank you for our veterans, for their service and for their sacrifice. Please be with all those who serve and continue to keep them safe. In your son's name we pray. Amen.